Welcome to the Deep Podcast, where we discuss in-depth, deep topics and real-life experiences that you do not hear every day. As a fair warning to our new viewers, our podcast may contain sensitive material and language. With that being said, I'm your host, Carl Ozer, and I welcome you to the show.
Today's guest is Keith Green. Keith is going to discuss with us the differences between traditional home economics and modern home economics. Keith, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Not too bad.
All right. Well, yeah, so I hear that home economics in high school is completely different than what you're going to discuss today.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people think about home economics and they automatically think back to like middle and high school when they were just kind of cooking and sewing classes and everyone kind of thought they were useless, and they pretty much were. Originally home economics started out as something that was actually functional in the home, and then it became less and less important through the 20th century. And now I think we're at a time where we need to rethink home economics and look at it from a modern point of view and really start to apply it. I think it could really help a lot of people's lives. You know, I live paycheck to paycheck like a lot of people do out there, and it's kind of getting old, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
So, I was in the military right out of high school, and then I ran restaurants for a while. And,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then after running restaurants for about 9 years, I decided, I was sick of doing it because, I didn't feel like I was helping anybody. I just watch these people come through line every day, and it's like, man, these people they're killing themselves with this. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel good about what I was doing. I decided to get into solar, and that's where I really started thinking about home economics from a different point of view, because here my customers were...
So are you talking about like solar roofing or
Yeah,
like
I
solar
panels for
cool.
for homes, residential homes, battery backups, all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so I started realizing, these people are trying to produce something instead of consuming everything. We've always been known as consumers, and I think it's time we kind of change that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And, we always hear "Make America Great Again," right? So how can we do that? How can we be, the producers once again? We're all consumers right now.
Right. And so that's what I kind of thought about. I was like, well, how does our whole home economy work? And being in solar, it kind of seemed to work a lot like electricity. And there's different areas of our home economy. And when I look at it, the definition of economics is the science of production, consumption, and distribution of goods and services.
Okay.
So I decided to look at my home as an actual economy and see what was I producing, consuming, and distributing. And all I saw was that I'm distributing time, a lot of time, in exchange for money.
Yeah, I really don't feel like most people even take an abstract view and just like look at their house and say, you know what, I'm going to make this look like an economy. They kind of just they just don't think. They just live day to day, like you said, paycheck to paycheck, and it doesn't get them anywhere. So I'm really fascinated about this view, and I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just so I started looking at that, and I'm like, all right, all I do is distribute my time for a business. Now I'm self-employed, which is great, but it's not. I still work every day. My employment's still based entirely on me getting up and going to work every day, basically. You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm independently wealthy where I own a business and people just go make money for me every day. So I'm like, all right, well, what am I consuming? I distribute my time for money, and then that money gets taxed at 30%. So right now, my goal is to convert my time into the things I want, right? I mean, I think that's everyone's goal.
Sure.
I want to spend my time, and at the end of spending my time, I want the things I want, be it spend time with family, vacation, cool cars, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that, okay, I'm spending my time and I'm getting money, but I'm only getting 70% of the money after taxes, if that. So that makes that portion of my economy only 70% efficient. Well, 70% efficiency sucks. So
Yeah.
so there's got to be better ways to become more efficient in turning my time into the things I want in life.
So so is your aim to get like full value of your time, or close to it?
Yeah, I would like
Like,
to get, as close to full value of my time as I can. There's a lot to it, of course. And
yeah,
no one can ever do that, but 70%, if you can increase your profits or your conversion efficiency 5%, 10%, that's a massive difference that you would recognize in your life.
absolutely.
By doing a lot of that. And I heard a quote, and I forget who said it, and the guy said, growing your own food is like making your own money. And I was like,
Yeah.
it's really true. And so we spend all this time to go make money to buy food. Well, if you figure out, and I haven't done the math on all this, but if you figure out how much time you're spending driving to work and then working to earn the money to buy the food, plus how much time you're spending cutting your grass and maintaining your lawn, if that was all invested in growing your own food, you might find out that you'd have a lot better results. You'd get a lot better food out of it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And that would have health implications as well. So when you start looking at the whole economy in that sort of way, beyond just finances and cooking and sewing and stuff like that, I kind of use, since economics is supposedly a science, at least, I use like a 5th or 6th grade version of the scientific method, because I'm not sitting here with a lab coat figuring it all out.
Yeah, it also it sounds like you're basically just cutting out the middleman. Like, you're almost saying like jobs are the middleman, and you basically, instead of going to a job to get the stuff I need, I just do it myself in my home economy kind of thing. Like, I make the direct needs. Like, if you want to do, like, for instance, you need food, you make your food directly. What and that actually, like you said, driving your car, going to work, paying for gas, mowing mowing your grass, doing all this other stuff just to
barely put food on your plate.
Yeah, just the food on your table. I mean, and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Is it more efficient to just do it yourself?
So that's
a very good question.
So that's kind of my hypothesis, is that overall you could be more efficient, I would think. I think part of the problem is in society today is that we're very dependent. So if a home economy is the smallest economy, I kind of broke it down into 6 zones. So that would be our smallest economy. Then we'd have our community economy. Then you have region, state, country, and world. And our problem as individuals is that all of the requirements of life that we have, we're dependent on businesses and entities that work at the global and national level and have very little interest at the community and home level, where if we got the majority, I'm not saying everything, you know what I mean, but if we got the majority of our requirements of life locally and from home, then we would have a lot more pull, because you can't really be free until you're independent. If you're dependent, then you're beholden to the person you're dependent on, or group or organization.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of, obviously sometimes I talk about this and people will be like, well, you obviously have to deal with other people. And I'm like, of course, but you don't have to necessarily deal with multinational conglomerates to get your food. You should be able to get almost all of your food fairly locally, especially with the technology that exists today.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that, because I actually think a lot of the reason we have these really big companies that buy, all these small companies out and, just keep coming bigger is because of almost like a socialist society, like the social part of our society, because in a purely like capitalistic world, there's really not a way. I mean, there would be a way, but it just seems like it would be a lot harder to just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to get shareholders under this name, and I'm going to branch out. It just seems like it would be a lot more difficult, I guess you could say, to get to that level. But besides the point, what I was going to say was, when it comes to buying from those big businesses, what do you think about like the local community, like you're talking, you were saying?
Well, I think that's where a lot of the answers are, is in the local community and in yourself, your home economy, and community economy. Because of course, I can't grow everything I need to eat, but maybe my neighbor grows some of the stuff that I need, and just smaller scale economy. We need to bring it back.
Sure.
To much smaller. We just got, in the town I live in, they just got buses, and it's not a huge town, but everyone's all excited about these buses, and it's like $8 million, and I'm like, well, where did the $8 million come? I'm like, oh, it's federal funding. I'm like, well, I don't think some guy in Montana should be buying me a bus that I don't want to use. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I think everyone wants, they say they want to help, but they don't really understand that the solutions lie at home, not necessarily at the world and or national levels.
I mean, I agree. I mean, that's like telling, like, all right, I think there was a presidential candidate that said, or have you heard of Vermin Supreme?
I've heard of him. I don't know.
Yeah. He I don't know if I think he's just a big parody of the presidency. He wears a boot on his head, so he's clearly joking, or I don't know. I don't take him seriously, but he says toothbrushes for everybody, or basically give everybody a toothbrush. Like and so like, I mean, personally, I'm going to use a toothbrush, and I'm sure most people do use toothbrushes, but what about the people that don't? Or what if I said ponies for everybody? I like ponies. Why don't you like a pony? And then if everybody started saying, well, I like this, I want this to be mandated, what do we get? We get a big cluster, and like you said, I think that's kind of where we're at now, is we got so complex, and you're saying let's go back to the simpler economy and more community oriented, and let's be, all right, I do the sweet potatoes and lettuce and tomatoes, and you have the livestock, or whatever, and we trade and just do basic.
And money's still going to be a thing. I don't think
Sure.
I don't think the U.S. currency is going to be a thing. I think there's better options out there. Sound currency. I had this idea on electricity and currency being kind of the same, because they're both energy. Electric is electric energy, and money and currency is a representation of human energy.
Yeah. AC
electric always has to be moving back and forth, and DC electric only goes in one direction. And so,
yeah, could you explain that more? Because I'm actually not really familiar too much about that. Is that something like how does, like, in what aspect does that help, like, relate to money, or relate to? Yeah, if you could just explain, I would. Yeah.
I can't get into the real depths of electricity because
Sure.
It's obviously super complicated, but basically, AC electric has to be moving constantly.
Okay.
And DC electric moves in one direction, so AC goes back and forth real fast. And when it says like 60 hertz or whatever, then it's going back and forth 60 times a second.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then DC only goes in one direction. And DC current and electricity is the only kind of that has a battery. There's no AC electric battery. There's only DC batteries.
Okay, that makes sense. Gotcha.
So when it relates to money, AC would relate to the U.S. dollar or fiat currency, in that it always has to be moving back and forth. You can't, if you leave it stagnant, it'll lose all its energy quick.
Yep.
And there has to be a producer, a source of it at all times. If the source or producer goes away, then there's a major issue as well. Whereas with DC energy would be like gold or silver. There's a finite amount of it, so you can't produce anymore. So all the human energy you put in stays in that gold. It only increases more and more energy. It's worth more and more human energy as more and more people use it as a currency.
Yeah.
So that's why if you look at like an ounce of gold 100 years ago, an ounce of gold 100 years ago would have bought you a nice suit and was worth $20. And then we got off the gold currency and the gold standard and everything. But an ounce of gold today will still buy you a nice suit. $20 today ain't buying you a nice suit.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows how it's a good store of energy, where like DC Electric's a good store of energy and AC Electric can't store energy.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I would relate that. Bitcoin, all those other things that are finite, that are sound currency, would be considered some form of DC energy. In my world, each community could have their own currency or money if they wanted.
Sure. I mean, really, it's just a medium of exchange. Like, okay, I can't give you, I'm not going to give you my full cow for your, potato. Like, it's just really hard to do, or a sack of potatoes. So it's just a medium of exchange. Like, all right, one cow is worth, in this case, I'm talking dollars. That's what most people are used to. So like, one cow might be $300, and the potatoes, a sack of potatoes is like what, $5? $5. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so I was just.
So right now the U.S. dollar is what we use for everything. So I decided, what things can we stop using the dollar for? I watching people, instead of buying electric with the dollar, they're like, wait a second, I can produce electric. And that I think will have, if you keep it for the whole 20 years, the warranties are 20 years, 25 years on the solar panels. So I can't imagine the electric prices being close to the same as they are now 25 years from now. So when you're done paying off your solar panel system, which seems expensive now, 20 years down the road, you'll be like, so glad I did this 20 years ago instead of yesterday. Because electric prices and stuff are going to keep going up. So that's one way of taking it back. Okay, now I'm producing my electric. I'm not just consuming it. Same with food. It's producing. If you can grow food, then you can produce it and not have to consume as much. And then you're converting less of your energy to money, and you're more efficient. You know what I mean? You're not losing all that tax money.
Sure. So you're almost essentially saying, like, turn your home into like some kind of money making device.
Sure.
Or when I say money, it doesn't necessarily mean U.S. dollar. It means like some value of exchange.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Find out, if you're a basket weaver or whatever, then like where I live, I have just under an acre. And I firmly believe that my location gets enough traffic, and if I had the money to convert the things all at once, I can make my acre produce more than I would ever need, and I would never have to leave my house if I didn't want to. You know what I mean? I could set up a little stand out front each day, sell a little bit, have all the food I need, have all the electric I need. I think the design of homes now is a major issue. And I think homes in general need to change, but obviously most people live in a house that they bought. They can't just knock it down or move to the woods or whatever else that they,
Yeah.
If you watch on YouTube, you're like, I'm just gonna move away and live in the wilderness or on a school bus, but that's not realistic for a lot of people.
No, not at all. I mean, people, like community. They like living within, the social environment. I actually think some people just see a house as like it's almost like a service it's providing for you. I mean, like, people just like, I'm just gonna, it is a service essentially, or,
Yeah.
It's a shelter, and that's what it does. It provides a shelter, and then you got the luxuries in the shelter, and then you got,
the energy and the internet and, communications, and, then you have transportation, your cars and everything, and your health ties into all that. These are all different things we produce and consume and distribute with society and the world. But we're dependent on so much. Security is a great example of something we're dependent on. So many people just assume that the police are there for their security, and unfortunately, no matter how good the police officer is and how much they want to be there to stop that dude that kicked in your door at 3 a.m, they ain't getting there till 5 minutes later.
That's why people invest in guns, and guns are a great investment because not only do they go up in value, or they at least retain their value as long as they're not damaged or whatever, and then become antiques. They become worth something, as long as they're able to be shot. there's value to them. There's a lot of functionality to them.
And they're immediately priceless the day you need one.
Exactly.
It's immediately the most valuable thing in the world the day you need it.
Exactly.
But even one thing about security, there's other ways. There's passive ways to be secure. People, some people plant like rose bushes and whatnot with thorns, or lemon trees or lime trees outside their windows, because someone's not going to want to come through a window if they have to fight through a thorn bush, and there's an easier house next door that doesn't have the thorn bush, Or
yeah.
I have a dog that was shot in the eye with a BB gun by some kid. And I'm like,
wow.
Man, it cost him his eye. He's lucky he's a giant dog, or it would have cost him his life probably.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, I would hate to walk out and see a kid pointing a gun at my dog, because I'd shoot.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I'd react back. And so I'm like, well, how can I make it so these people just don't bother my dogs? And my thought is, because I have a big long sidewalk in the front of my house.
Sure.
And my thought was I want to line my whole sidewalk with flowers, and then I want to get beehives. And then the bees will be all over the flowers all day, and people just walk on the other side of the street, because they're not going to mess with bees. What are you going to do with bees? So now I have bees to protect my dogs. I'm getting honey. It's a win-win solution to all of that. Now no one has to go to jail. My dog gets to keep his eyes. Everybody gets to work out that way.
That's actually interesting, yeah.
And so I think, we just need to kind of rethink, and the way a lot of these systems and these big businesses and stuff started was that we didn't have the technology to do the things ourselves. Waste management, if done properly, is something that individuals can do with worms, and of course you're never going to get this done in like a big city, or,
Are you talking about like composting and stuff? Or?
Composting, so even human waste, human waste, flushing your toilet, and reusing gray water. Why, if I use water in the shower, there's no reason it can't go through my toilets after that. You know what I mean? And now I've got my water used twice, and then after it goes through the toilet, it goes out into a tank that's filled with worms that just eat it and compost it down, and whatever. And that.
Have you ever heard of permaculture?
I have. I'm pretty familiar. That's kind of part of where I got all of this too, is learning about permaculture and how you can kind of create areas like that just sustain themselves in lots of ways.
Yeah, I find it, I don't know enough about it. I find it extremely interesting, and it sounds very much along the same lines as what you're going at. I think it's a little different, but it sounds very similar. I think you're more technological, when permaculture is more like working with nature, from what I understand.
Right. And permaculture seems to be work with nature and land, and it's all food based. Where that's kind of one aspect of your home economy, is the food. What I learned working in solar is that, well, for one, if you say preppers, some people get freaked out. And if you say, I'm saving the planet,
it's those crazy people that listen to. It's those crazy people that listen to Alex Jones, and
I meet lots of people. I meet lots of preppers that are hardcore conservative. And then my next job, I'll pull up and it'll be like a Subaru with a kayak on the roof and a Greenpeace sticker, and they're like, "Hey man, I want to save the planet, so I'm canning food and doing this and that." I'm like, "You guys are doing the exact same thing. So you're just calling it different stuff, and you hate each other. It doesn't make any sense. You both have cans of food. You're both getting solar panels. You both got all this stuff. One of you is doing it because the world's going to end. The other one's doing it because the world's going to end. Just for different reasons, And I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. So that's one reason too. I kind of decided to go with like the home economic angle, is because it's a term everyone's familiar with, and it can be more neutral, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, the world's going to end. You know what I mean? It's like, let's fix it before the world ends so it doesn't have to end, maybe. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. I mean, you're very right about that. And I find that most people actually are arguing for no reason. Like, most people disagree with stuff that they really shouldn't be disagreeing with. Every day, yeah, and it's almost like it's just an ego problem, or something they just can't, let go of or something,
Yeah, people have a hard time facing their, the truth, or facing whatever it is that, you're talking to them about sometimes, and especially on the internet. I've realized on the internet, if you're debating with a person over something, you're never going to convince that person in the online conversation. So there's no real point in trying. The only point in debating is to convince everybody that's reading that you're right. But
I agree. I think it also the other side of it, I actually think people do sometimes turn. They won't say it. They won't show in front of other people. But in the back of their mind, they're like, maybe I wasn't. And next time when they actually do want to argue and no one knows they argued that before, they'll actually argue the other side. So it's kind of good to you get to hear both sides. So that's kind of the good thing about that. But yeah, I agree. During the actual argument, they're never gonna. You're not going to change their mind there, and you could also, push them further, into their, ways. It kind of just depends on the person.
Yeah. And I think the way people talk to each other, they wouldn't say things to their face that they say online, regardless of what the topic is anymore. They just say these incredibly nasty things about people they've never met, and that's why. That's why I think, again, home economics, you bring it back, and then you bring it to your local community, and you start to talk to your neighbor face to face, and you start walking around your neighborhood, and you start getting to meet people. I thought one idea I've considered tossing around is like an app or something where if I grew eggplants and my neighbor grew pumpkins, I'd be like, oh, my neighbor's got pumpkins, and they want eggplants, so let me go take some eggplants over. People walk around trying to catch Pokemon. Like they walk around trying to catch dinner, and
it sounds that sounds like the local farmers market, but instead of having it in one area, just whenever you need, your local produce or local whatever, you just go to the app and
because it's doing something. I don't know. I've gone to plenty of local farmers markets, and down in Charlotte, the Charlotte farmers market's great. But you get to some of these smaller town farmers markets, and they're all the same. They're not real interesting. They're not something. I don't know. I feel like if you want to get up and go out on a Saturday morning and go shopping for the week for your food, maybe have stuff going on that would be interesting. And listen, I don't have ideas, so I'm big. If you don't have ideas, don't complain. But I don't know. They're just kind of boring and not very. I don't know.
I agree. Because if they were, more attractive, more people would go. That's kind of it.
If they were more interesting, people would go.
It's also funny because I feel like people know what's right and know it, like, oh, I need to eat healthy, or oh, I should be doing this, oh, I should be doing that. Like, this is what the right way is, but these like bigger companies like McDonald's. Well, I shouldn't say. I really shouldn't mention names, but like the fast food restaurants and stuff like that. In general, just in general, they're putting out advertisements, and man, do their burgers look good? It looks really delicious. And man, I could eat healthy today, but man, that dollar burger, that looks really good. And I'm not sure if it's a real burger or not, but at the same time, it's good enough to to eat.
Part because there isn't anything in their refrigerator right now. You know what I mean? There's nothing in their backyard. They don't. I think especially kids, because obviously to try and get people, I don't know how old you are, I'm 38, but to try and get people my age to stop going to Chick-fil-A or whatever is not an easy feat. But if you can teach kids. I believe that if kids grow food, they'll eat the food that they grow. They'll at least try it. You know what I mean? You may never get a kid to try peas, but if you let him grow peas, then he'll be far more interested in trying it, I would imagine.
Sure.
And I don't have kids, but that's just I was a kid once, so I kind of understand how curiosity and stuff works. So.
when they're at the age of when they're growing, they and they find something new and they're like, oh, this is cool. I don't know about a teenager, but a kid. Yeah, I think you're right. I do think at the age like, oh, I just grew this peas, like you said, and sure, let me try. Let's try cooking it. Or some kids like, I just caught this fish. Oh, let's try this fish. Or whatever.
Right, and when they get to teenager, they should be, then maybe they understand the growing and making of it or whatever. Now they got to figure out, well, how are we going to sell or get rid of all the extra stuff? What do we need? What are we going to, trade for? With all
I agree.
So now they can move into the kind of marketing of the home economy amongst other home economies.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just talking about like if you started at a teenager level, like, oh yeah, let's. I think you missed it. I think you missed that the chance to educate. I mean, some teenagers might be interested, but they have to want to be interested. When a child, you show them like, hey, this is how you grow food.
It's harder to grab a teenager's interest. I actually have a high school bus stop across the street from me, and I put out a whiteboard. I call it my real life Facebook. And I put different things to make these kids think while they're standing out at the bus stop all the time. It's funny.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's really neat.
I haven't actually. It fell down in the last rainstorm, but I haven't got it back up yet. But I'll see people walking by because I get a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people driving by my house, and I'll see them taking pictures of it and stuff. I've never found it online, but
that's still really cool. Yeah, that's actually. I mean, you're definitely sharing your message, or you're getting people thinking.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't know. I put it out there and I just leave it out there, and I don't ever talk to the people that walk by on most times. But sometimes I'll go out there and people are like, oh, you're changing the sign up. I love reading your signs or whatever. I'm like, all right, I got to start changing this more.
Do you ever so with your sign, do you ask questions or do you write statements or do you do quotes? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, a little bit of all of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just put things up there that are kind of thought provoking, be it a question, or just a statement or a little bit of fact that people don't realize, or
yeah. See, and the funny thing is, I've always found that when you're more either if you're coming from an informational level rather than a so there's different ways of talking to people. If you're trying to be persuasive, like, you should totally do this.
Right.
Rather than, oh, I've done this way, or people have done it this way and they've got this out of it and this is how it works. And if you talk more informational, I've realized people are more receptive to that rather than just like, oh yeah, you need to do it this way, or
if you can lead them to it, if you can lead them to the solution themselves, like, I don't know, we met on the Liberate RVA page, so we obviously have some common beliefs there. But to go to these people on the far right or the far left and be like, hey, this, we should all just let each other be and, let the free market decide. They'll never just go for that. That's way too big of a pill to swallow. So kind of, I feel like if I can start using home economics and the different areas of home economics through a web page and YouTube and stuff, and start guiding people down these little things that the mainstream can digest, and like, oh man, I want to save money, you know what I mean? That makes sense.
Yeah, I actually think this is...
And then all of a sudden, they're all the way in it, and now they're face to face with something that they have a problem reconciling as far as freedom and doing what they want to be able to do goes. And then I don't have to present that problem. The problem presents itself to them.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think actually, I mean, personally, I think we are going to start hitting rough times. I don't want to say the world's collapsing or anything like that. I think people are just gonna. People are very comfortable right now, and I just don't think they don't understand what. They don't understand like what happens when they can't have those luxuries anymore. And I think that's what's going to hurt people.
If something happens, it's going to happen fast, and it's going to be very bad. Because like you said, the difference between the way we live and the way 90% of the world lives.
Yeah.
If we switched roles, that would be like Bill Gates waking up with my bank account tomorrow. He'd just be like, what in the world? I'm going to just hang myself or blow my brains out or something because I can't do this anymore. And that'd be the same thing. It'd be like me, all of a sudden I'm sitting in front of a TV and a phone, and I'm walking in the woods with a backpack thinking I'm really hungry. I mean, that could be the reality for people, and I don't think people realize how fast that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're very
producer, then you could be lucky.
See, that's the thing. I mean, I would definitely admit that I'm very dependent on, I depend on a lot from society that it offers me. I mean, obviously I pay for it, but I'm still very dependent when I'm not a producer. I think I need to definitely dive in more into that because like you said, at least if you're producing, you could you can offer anything extra. If I'm producing food, for instance, I can offer food for trade, or there's other examples, I'm sure, and it's kind of whatever you find you could produce within your house. Actually, at one point, I had a friend of mine. He was mining cryptocurrency, and that's basically and he was mining cryptocurrency during the winter. So not only was his computer heating up his whole house because it gets very hot when you mine. Yeah, so he was not only heating his whole house up. He had a small house, I know, but his electric bill wasn't that high. It would have been about the same, with the heat and everything. And then, he's also mining cryptocurrency, and people don't understand it, and I don't want to get into it because it's kind of detailed, but he's basically confirming transactions that are happening and getting fees from the people sending transactions, just like PayPal or something. Like I mean, I say PayPal, but you get what I'm saying. So he was making money doing that while also heating up his house. So he was being pretty efficient in that matter, and that was his way of being a producer.
Exactly, trying to find more ways than one or try to get more than one thing out of something. So like, my house faces south, which is perfect for solar. House. But it's not just perfect for solar electric and solar panels. Like if I were to somehow encase if my house was built and the whole front of it was a greenhouse, in South Carolina I would never have a heating bill again because the sun would more than heat up my house with a greenhouse attached to the front.
Yeah. I know a guy locally that does aquaponics. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Is that water grown food, or is that?
So you have fish tanks, and then the water from the fish tanks is pumped through garden beds, and the plants feed off the fish waste. And
that's right.
And they clean the water for the fish, and the fish feed the plants. So it's you're just feeding the fish. And this guy's greenhouse was like 85 degrees in the middle of January. So, on a larger scale, my house would have no problem heating itself if it was designed better, powering itself. And those are things that in future homes should start to have all over. I think we see these problems in hurricane zones. These places are tornado zones. These places get wiped out by these disasters, and then because everyone's so dependent on the country to help with everything, the country has to come in with FEMA and pay all these people to rebuild all these houses the exact same way. Whereas if they were personally responsible for their own home economy, I bet they would start designing their houses a bit differently so that they didn't get destroyed every single hurricane.
Yeah.
All of a sudden your house has a snorkel, it's like a dome, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, well, my house is the only house that didn't get destroyed during the hurricane. And then your neighbors are like, wow, I want to build my house like that because my house did get destroyed. But when you have FEMA coming in and an insurance coming in with all these big dollars to just rebuild everything the way it was as fast as possible, then it just happens over and over and over again, and that's not a sustainable.
I mean, I absolutely agree. So what other ways do you think we could be more efficient in our house? I mean, I guess because wouldn't you say like saving money or saving consumption is also like a way of producing essentially? Like you're not like it's using using less.
Right, right. So there's conservation and efficiency. So like let's say it takes 100 watts to heat my house, for example. And I install a Nest thermostat. Now it only takes me 90 watts to install to heat my house. Well, that's efficiency. I'm 10% more efficient. Now, if I turn my thermostat off half of the time, now I'm conserving 50%. So together they're like a force multiplier. But yeah, efficiency is completing the job with less energy, and conservation is just doing it less.
Okay.
So turning off the lights behind your house, or when you leave a room, would be conservation, and replacing the bulbs with LED bulbs would be efficiency.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always thought about doing I've actually thought about this myself, and I don't know enough about sensors and stuff, but I mean I know the basics of it. You have an input and output, so when this sensor kicks on, something an action would happen, or something would happen in reaction to a sensor getting a thing. So like I thought about door sensors, but I don't know how to actually get it to work. But you have a door, when a door opens, the lights turn on. When a door and then it turns off as you walk out. It's almost like smart home, but using it in a way to be more efficient, not using it to, hey Alexa, what's the recipe for this? Like I can just look it up myself. I mean, I guess it helps, but you know what I'm saying? Like I think there's really good ways to use smart home devices and stuff like that, and I think people don't utilize them more.
For sure. Like so my thermostat, I can set the full schedule for it, and then it gives me a report every month on how many hours the heat was on, how many hours the air conditioning was on, or whatever. And then I don't have Alexa, I have that other one, but I won't say their name, so it'll start listening and doing stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I can have it turn on lights and turn off lights, and I can set schedules where I'm like, oh, okay, good night, and then it sets my house to certain settings, or I can say, oh, good morning, and then it'll be like, oh, hey, today this is what you got going on, and
Yeah.
So it can definitely help you be more efficient. That's part of, that's the kind of thing, is kind of bringing technology of today back with the way our grandparents lived in a lot of ways, and kind of combining the two and cutting out, like you said, cutting out the middleman of these corporations and everything else that are providing us with this stuff that we really don't, that we could produce on our own today. We may not have been able to do it, 30, 40, 50 years ago, but today we can do a lot more of it on our own because information's so much more available.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like you got, like you said, the information is available. You got YouTube, you got all these great outlets. There's so many. I mean, I learned so much from YouTube just because like watching how-to videos or whatever. I mean, most things are. I mean, even mechanics. Like I'm not a mechanic myself, and I don't recommend. I mean, you gotta be safe. That the biggest thing is safety. But for the most part, like I don't think half kids these days don't even know how to change a tire, and I'm like, it's just 5 lug nuts, and you know what I mean. Like you gotta raise the jack, and I didn't know, but I learned, and it wasn't that hard. I've changed my brakes.
What people think today is, listen, I don't have to know until I have to know, and then when I have to know, I'll just YouTube it.
Yeah.
Tying a tie, I don't care. I used to know how to tie a tie. I don't now. Every time I need to tie a tie, I go on YouTube. I'm like, oh, let's see what kind of knot I want to tie this time. Double Windsor, all right.
Yep.
And then I tie it once, and then I don't ever remember how to tie it again like that. I'm done.
Yeah.
So it's literally like the Matrix, when they're like, oh man, I think he likes it. And when Neo starts training and everything, and they just start, he's like, oh, I want to learn how to fly a helicopter. When he flies the helicopter, I mean, we're not far off from there. From 1999, when that movie came out, to today, we are so much closer to that than ever imagined.
Yeah, Yeah, I know. It is really crazy.
At the same time, like my grandmother, if my grandmother, who's like 93, had to watch me try and kill and prep a chicken, she would shake her head in shame. Because like it was nothing to her growing up. You go out, you grab the chicken by the neck, shake it, pluck it, and get it ready for dinner. You know what I mean? And like we've completely lost touch with where these basic necessities of life come from in one generation. And I think that's a major problem, especially if bad times are ahead, because you better know the necessities of life.
Yeah, it's almost like the basics, like back to like the basics of the basic manufacturing or basic. When I say manufacturing, basic production, I say, or basic like how to make, like how to sew. I mean that is important. Like how to. Certain. I mean, we don't use it every day because, man, right now we have the luxury of just, hey, someone's gonna sew for me. Someone's. We're very. Exactly.
I think the younger generations are starting to be more conscious of that in a lot of ways, even though they tend to be far more liberal too. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
It's a very odd time. It's very 1984-ish.
Yeah, I also think it has to do with the education system itself. I mean,
for sure.
I mean, they're hitting them while they're young, and what they're taught in school is what they're taught. I mean, they say who writes the history books? The people that or who chooses the history books? For instance, like, are they going to choose a history book that makes them look bad, or are they going to choose the one that makes them look good? Like that's so. I mean, yeah, they set the curriculum and all this stuff, but at the same time, what are they teaching everybody, and what are they not teaching everybody?
They're not teaching. What they're not teaching everybody is how to think. They're teaching them what to think. And like even when I look online, it's part of why I decided to get into this home economics thing and start designing a web page and YouTube channel and stuff for it, is because I'd see these people saying, oh, kids should have an adulting 101 class, or kids should be taught this or that and that and this in school. And I'm like, no, why don't you teach them? Why don't you let the state be teaching them this stuff when this is definitely stuff you should be teaching them? The state's not going to teach them how best to do any of these things. The state's setting it up, for their best interests.
It's like, okay, so it's like, economics really should be taught in school. Okay, yeah, you're right. We should teach, and then mandated to teach economics, have an economics class in school, and then it goes, let's teach you, Keynesian economics. Like, we're going to teach you that type of economics. We're going to teach you the economics that we think is best for you.
Right, instead of both sides.
Yeah, it's all one-sided, and where does that lead you? It doesn't let you think. It just tells you, like you said, what to think, not how to think.
So, and this is where I think teachers should be making the move if they were smart. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't too. So, if you're a teacher, a lot of teachers don't like what they get paid, and they don't like a lot of the things about school. So, if I were a teacher, I would go online and start my online school, and I would build a first grade curriculum or whatever grade I teach, and I would build that curriculum, and all of a sudden my students that are paying, whatever they pay for that curriculum, if all of a sudden they're going on to be doctors and lawyers and geniuses or whatever else, well, then other people are going to want to take my class. And since it's online, I can teach 1 million people at once and not have a problem. And then not only that, now I'm making money. I'm making so much money, I can teach poor kids for free, and then they're going on to be doctors, and the free market would solve that problem, but no one does it. I don't understand.
See, and the funny thing is, I absolutely agree. And the funny thing is, when it comes to teachers, I've always thought, I'm like, well, if you're a professional, most of them get doctorates or master's degrees in their subject, and then if you're that smart and you have that background, I mean, I'm just assuming are that smart and have that well enough background. But assuming you went through all that schooling, you would think that you would say, I don't need this curriculum that they're giving me. I am smart enough to make my own curriculum, and I know it's going to benefit my class. And if I'm that good, and basically make a competition of the curriculum, like I made my own syllabus, I made my own structure of the class, and if my science class is better than your science class, then they're going to pay me more because people want to attend my class more than they want to attend your class. Or if they made it more like teachers competing against one another, I think a lot of teachers would make more money. I think it would be, but what and the reason and the government doesn't want that. The government doesn't want teachers to have their own curriculums because or they want teachers to follow their curriculum. So hey, everybody gets paid the same base salary because everybody's following the same curriculum. No one gets any more, no one gets any less. I mean, yeah, you have some seniority, like, oh, you've been here for 10 years or whatever, but you get what I'm saying. Like, if you just tell everybody they have to follow the curriculum, yeah, of course they're going to get paid the same. So it's not advantageous for teachers to have a curriculum. It's best for them to make their own, but
that would be more work. Well, Ron Paul's Homeschool Revolution, I don't know if you've read that. It's a really good book, talks about that.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a really good book, and it talks about that, and it just talks about school in general and how school's kind of backwards. Like, you go there and you listen to the teacher, and then you go home and do homework. You should actually be learning the lesson online at home and then come into class and doing the work so that the teacher can help with what you don't understand regarding it, And
sure.
If you're watching online and you're a kid, you can go back and watch the same thing over and over and over again until you understand it and not feel dumb in front of the rest of your class because you don't understand it,
Yeah.
And if you're doing the work in class and the one kid is real good at math, he can help you in math, and maybe you're real good in English and you're helping him in English, and now the teachers have less because the students are helping each other. It's weird. Growing up, it's called cheating, and then when you get in the real world, it's called collaborating. And
yeah, it's funny. Like I never understood. Like, well, you're not allowed to use cell phones on a test. You're not allowed to use your book during the test. But like, if I was in a real life situation and I needed to use if anything, they should be teaching you how to use your resources better. Like, I'm in the situation, I don't know the answer, so I need to use my resources to get the answer. Because you're not gonna know every answer in real. Like, I'm not gonna, why use your brain to memorize things when you could use your brain to know how to find the information you need, so you can use that information the most effective way.
Yeah. There was I forget who it was. It was an old businessman. I feel like it might have been Henry Ford, but I forget. And he said something along the lines of, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room as long as I know the smartest person in the room or whatever. As long as I can find the answer, then I don't have to know the answer. I just need to know how to find it.
Exactly, and that's it. I mean, that's really the solution. So like, that's why when it comes to so I actually could say, though, I would say knowledge could be a currency of exchange. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, it can be street knowledge, like as in like, hey, I got information on that person over there. It could be, or just, I guess that's not really knowledge, that's more information. But, information can be a currency. Like, there's different ways. There's a lot of different ways to make production. I actually, a long time ago, I was watching a documentary, and then I saw somewhere that there's neighbors that actually spy on all the other neighbors and like take data on their neighbors. Have you heard about this?
No.
And it almost made me see. It almost kind of goes with your idea. I mean, I don't agree with it at all. Obviously, I'm for privacy, and I think I like respecting other people's privacy, as I hope they would respect mine. But that's a way to make money. I mean, a way to, hey, I'm going to sell information of other people.
Yeah. I mean, that's
And
news, really. If it's worthwhile, if someone will pay for it.
someone will pay for it. That's a means of production from your house. I mean,
Right. It's like me flying my drone around, catching accidents and crime from my house or something, just flying it back and selling it.
Yeah.
Which would be
I mean,
awesome.
yeah, that's exactly it. That's possible. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
People can be reporters. Like, I mean, the news, all facets of the news seem to be pretty much compromised, mainstream media anymore. And that trickles all the way down because your local newspaper's owned by a bigger corporation. And, that could be a business for the local nosy person that walks around all the time and looks in their neighbor's windows. Maybe they go around and they write a newsletter for their neighborhood about all the goings-on. And at the same time, they sell blinds so that they can't see in your house if you don't want them to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, any of that stuff could actually be a function of helping turn your home into an actual economy that produces stuff for you, be it, food or communications or energy, water. There's ways to purify rainwater to make it drinkable and safe now. And there's no reason people shouldn't be allowed to do that, or people shouldn't do that.
Yeah. But there are, I don't know every single state, but I know there's definitely laws that prohibit people from collecting rainwater across the U.S. I don't know exactly which states are allowed and which states are legal.
I think a lot of the ones that I've seen at least, they're not collecting like 100-gallon drum of rainwater in their backyard. They like dug out a pond. And they're like collecting tens of thousands of gallons of water. Now I don't know if that's all of them. In the end, I mean, if you wanted to collect rainwater, it wouldn't be that hard to hide rainwater collection at your house from authorities.
Oh, sure.
You just they make giant bladders that you could sit in your crawl space and fill up and let out, and no one would ever know. Not that I would condone that, of course, but if you live in Mexico or something, you could do something like that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's, and those are the types of things that seem innocent enough that can start to raise questions. If you get people on board, if I want to kind of build a following doing little things, making your own laundry detergent, composting, your coffee grinds or whatever, and then using that compost to grow an herb garden in your house. Those are little steps that you'll start to teach people and move down that path. And then when you get to, oh man, we've done all this stuff, let's clean our rainwater. Now you're face to face with the city and you don't understand why. I didn't do that. I didn't argue with you about it. You just came down that path yourself.
Yeah, that made me think of I forgot what they're called. There's like, so I used to see some YouTube videos. I used to watch them that, like, there's guys that like would set up with, I forgot what they're called. They're like little like small plants that are used in like restaurants and stuff like that. Why can't I think of the name? And basically, you just grow a bunch of them. Not succulents. They're they're kind of like succulents, but they're like chives and really quick growing.
Oh, like microgreens.
Microgreens. Thank you. Yes, microgreens. And you can literally set that up in a little corner of your house that just have it's size of a bookshelf, and make a lot of money just selling microgreens to local businesses or people,
And of course it takes effort to generate that market, especially depending on where you live. Where I live in South Carolina, you might have to teach these people a little bit about microgreens and find someone or learn to cook some things with them to demonstrate. But those are all things that help build your community. If you're growing microgreens or you grow this big garden and you want to sell some food from that garden, the best thing I would think to do is to create a giant pot of stew from all the stuff in your garden and give out bowls of stew and and be like, hey, it was all made from this stuff in my yard. Just little things like that, and it's just tiny steps at a time to try and make yourself and your home economy more efficient. Because again, you're going out to work every day, trading 8 hours of your time for money, and then you're losing 30% of that off the top on income tax and then property tax and sales tax. And by the time it's said and done, you're about 50% efficient at turning your energy into the things that you want in life. And that other 50% is going to someone else who wants to do what they want with your energy. And that seems like a raw deal to me.
Yeah, definitely. So I really appreciate this, having you on the show and this topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, because I think I'm going to start asking this question to each of my guests, and this is just kind of like a philosophical question, just to get you thinking, and just to hear what you have to say. So there's no right or wrong answer, obviously. So the first question I have is, what is the purpose of humans in general? It's a deep question, and that's why we're on the Deep Podcast.
Well, I would guess it would be I'm kind of an objectivist, so it would be kind of to make our own lives as good as possible, and enjoy it as much as we can. But what we realize is that, you can't do it at the expense of others, because that comes back in many different ways.
I've really thought about this question myself. I take it from more of a nihilistic standpoint. Like, I don't think there's any real reason we exist. I mean, I don't really know what our reason is to exist, if there is any. Like for a greater human aspect, I guess. But, I think, like you said, just, try to enjoy yourself while you're here, and, just live a meaningful life. I mean, would you agree? I mean, that's...
Yeah, our reason to exist is probably the same as a lion's reason to exist or an antelope's reason to exist. The difference is we can contemplate it and they can't. There is no
That's
reason.
true.
There may not be a reason. We're just sitting here thinking about what the reason is, where they don't have that burden. They can just run around and live the reason. I think the animal kingdom seems to be the only thing where anarchy works. Like, people can't wrap their heads around anarchy. I personally, I consider myself an anarchist, not like those Antifa or whatever. More, more of like a true libertarian version, but I don't believe in any government, because I think all of the things that the government claims to provide can be provided better by the free market.
Sure. I'm in the same boat as you. That's how I feel. Yeah.
The way to do that, is all that inefficiency that we have, converting our energy into money or into the things we want. All that inefficiency is being siphoned off to run these organizations that we don't support. So The first step towards all that is the home economy is reducing contact points with the things we don't agree with. And the more we reduce contact points, the more they starve out. And then if you starve them out, then there's no big bang, there's no big war, boogaloo, or whatever. They just fade off into the distance because they don't have any money to fund anything.
Yeah, it's just like outcompete. You're basically taking out your competitors by saying we don't need you anymore. We're just going to do it ourselves.
Yeah, just like really that's all that our founding fathers did, was they were like, hey, we don't really need the crown for this or for that or for any of this other stuff anymore. So screw you guys.
Yeah.
And you can't say that unless you're independent. I can't say screw Monsanto and then go out and buy Kraft macaroni and cheese and eggs for $1 or whatever else. You know what I mean? Like, I can't.
Yeah.
It's hypocritical. What you do is you figure out a better way. You raise chickens, and when you go buy eggs for $1, a dozen eggs for $2 or whatever, and you've had chickens, and you're like, there's no way it costs $2 to get a dozen eggs. Like, that's 12 chickens for one day, or one chicken for 12 days to get to that. So that costs me more than $1 in feeding them. So how are they able to get it to me? Well, it's subsidies and everything else. And I just think all that stuff needs to go away, and we need to just redesign everything, and while we're in the system, but start to split apart from it through a mitosis, I guess. Yeah,
I agree with you. I actually, I'll make it quick because I actually found it really interesting that China owns a lot of our farms, a lot of the United States, farms in the United States, and the fact is we highly subsidize those farms, but yet we're in a trade war with them, quote unquote, as they call it. But yet we're subsidizing these farms, and then I think I heard recently that Trump wanted to give more subsidies to the farmers, and I'm just like, but they own a really, I'm not sure exactly how much, but they own a lot of the farms, so it's all these subsidies, like you said, are just we're just throwing our money, the tax dollars that we're forced to pay them
into our crappy food.
Exactly.
And then that crappy food gives us health problems, which creates a whole new problem. It's not near impossible. It is impossible for someone to explain to me how it would be efficient or more beneficial to raise a chicken in California, send it to China to be prepped, and then sent back here. What, better than doing it in my yard? Listen, I've never killed a chicken, but one of these days I'm going to have to.
Yeah.
Because I'm a firm believer in that you should be willing to, if you're going to eat something, you should be willing to kill it to get it. At least willing to do it. I'm not saying you have to go out and kill every cow, when you want a hamburger, but if you should be willing to hunt deer, willing to, kill a chicken and prep a chicken or a turkey. People are so willing to go out and they're detached from all of that stuff. Somehow we've become detached from all of these basic requirements of life. And it doesn't make any sense. And that's what home economics is all about, trying to reattach us with those requirements and learn, teach people how to produce them themselves and be less dependent on national and global corporations and organizations and become more independent and locally interdependent.
Sure. All right, and one last question, because I just like asking this question as well, and it's also very deep, and this is probably a little bit more personal. So, feel free to answer how you choose. What is your meaning to your life? Like, what is your meaning to, like, what is your purpose? Your personal purpose. Like, what is your personal purpose?
To help teach people how to save themselves before it's too late. If we can, I feel like I'm not a millennial, I'm not a Gen X, I was born in 81, so I grew up without internet, and then internet and AOL came around in high school, so I grew, and then in the Marines I was a computer systems specialist, so I was, familiar with technology, and so I grew up without it and with it, and I think my job is to help maybe bridge that gap between the two generations, because I think we're in a really dangerous area where the next generation's about to be willing to give up everything without any resistance at all, and that's terrifying. If I can do something now to make the lives of the future generations better, that would be a good thing.
That's an excellent purpose. And it's funny. I think when I ask people this, even outside the podcast, I always find that people just want to help each other. People want to do good. I don't feel like people are like, I just want to take over the world and kill everybody. I don't think that's what people want. I think they just want. Now, I think where things really do happen is where good intentions aren't always good for all. That's where it goes. But I do think for the most part people are inherently, good. I think people want to help each other.
I agree with that, and I think there's people out there that promote good intentions but aren't necessarily good intention. You know what I mean? I'd be lying if I said, hey, I want to do these things and there's no self-fulfillment out of it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't get something out of it.
Sure.
So it's okay. A lot of people be like, oh, I just do it just to be a good person. It's like, well, no, let's be honest. You're doing it because you want something out of it. What is it you want out of it? Just be honest, and that makes it a whole lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and some people being saying when they say I want to be a good person, maybe it's just the saddest. Maybe they enjoy the reward doing doing good acts, and because that act gives them maybe their serotonin levels increase, or it gives them that satisfaction, that high that they just enjoy doing it. Like sometimes that actually is the reason people do things. Like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be for monetary value or anything like that. It's just, I got that really good satisfaction for helping someone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a personal gain. I've gone out and I've gave out lunches and stuff, and it gave those people lunch for the day, but it made me feel good for a week or so. I'm like, man, I went out and I kind of did something. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
more of that would make more people feel more good, and less of sitting around on FaceSpace and all those other ones. Talking to nameless people or faceless people on the other side of a screen. That creates the opposite of feeling good. Louis C.K. did a bit about it. Just about kids not disassociating, saying mean things online, and then not being able to look at a person in the face and realize the impact that saying that mean thing had.
Yeah.
Is something that lacks today. But
yeah.
I have hope. I think it can all be fixed. I think it can be saved. I think it's going to take a lot of work, but I think people are willing to. I think there's an ideological revolution that has already kind of started, and people are looking for answers and trying to find new solutions. It's just a matter of presenting it in a way that's something that's consumable to them and understandable and relatable, where they see the gain out of it.
Absolutely. Well, Keith, it's been great talking to you. And thanks. And I'm sure our listeners are happy, with our discussion. Now you did say you had a website, or you're getting a website. Do you have?
My webpage is thehomeecguy.com. I have Instagram. That's @homeecguy. HOMEECGUY.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll put that link in the description. I think if you're interested in learning more, definitely check out that link.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot about solar stuff right now, but my yard, my property, I call it Green's Acre, and it's going to be starting in next year probably. I'm going to start putting up a lot more videos of me and my journey of doing all this stuff we just talked about. I'm just kind of forming the hypothesis that all this stuff will work, and it seems to make sense in my brain. So now it's time for me to put it together and start doing it, and I'm going to share my journey with everybody. So hopefully they can follow along and add their input, because I know there's a lot of information out there that everybody has.
So you're walking the walk.
Yeah, that's gonna be. We're gonna crawl the crawl, and then we're gonna walk the walk. But
there you go.
I'm gonna share the journey with everybody, so we can all learn together.
Awesome. That's great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Podcast. Be sure to check out our other episodes.